Intruders Part 2.
The next theme seems to be being haunted by loss of the change of self. And so the first track there is the track Missing Me, which is, I think, the other very jazzy track on here.
One you can snap your fingers to.
Yeah.
A very, very nice bass line.
That harmonica.
The residents have, they haven't sounded like this before. I know that's sort of pointless to say, with the residents, because of course they haven't. But this is so far in a different direction. This one's funny. I like the story. Basically, it's about this dude, and he works the most boring, pointless job on the planet, and he feels like he's nobody, and he's lost his life to this thing that he's become, you know, that he pretty much can't even recognize, because it's so far from the person he was, and he's lost all passion. And in the lyrics for the song, it talks about him having dreams where he's in a cave, in a dark cave, underwater, looking for himself. But he can't find himself. And he's trying to figure out, like, who can he be if he doesn't know who he is. And in the story, it elaborates on that a little bit, but it actually proposes a resolution compared to, Voodoo Doll and the Scarecrow. What to do when faced with your intruder. This dude decides to take up bowling. And it sort of leaves us on a cliffhanger. We don't know how his bowling career goes, but he sure does pursue it.
I really hope it goes well.
Well, no, it says the story kind of leaves off at a kind of like, there's something to hold on to, like bowling. He loves bowling, but he had to go for it. Like, you know, maybe he's a little too old, but come on, man, he told himself do it. So that implies he hasn't done it yet, but it's something he could do. So it's like, he's depressed out of his mind, obviously, and like he knows there's something he can do about it, but he hasn't yet. For whatever reason, maybe it's because he feels so suppressed, but he hasn't done it. He knows he should, he's telling himself to do it, but he hasn't gotten out and done it.
Yeah.
This one, the lyrics to the song are so very abstract. You would not get the story at all without reading the story section.
Yes. If you don't have that story, it doesn't make any sense.
It does, because it still captures that if we're going to operate on the belief of this whole idea that he's depressed, because I think he sounds depressed. He's, I'm missing me, I'm missing me, I'm missing me. It's like, you lose yourself. He lost his self. He doesn't... Bowling might be his self, but he can't do it. He can't right here. He hasn't done it. I feel like I'm talking word salad.
There's also shark.
Yeah, out on the sea with the shark.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I'm getting some of the story. Wait, why is there a shark in the water?
The lyrics capture the sort of thematic, the theme of the song, which are just being lost with one's current self. I almost, because the lyrics describe the dream, I think in a lot of ways it sort of it reflects that, where someone's having this weird dream that captures their internal troubles, and then once you're given the context of their actual life, you're like, okay, you have a complete picture.
Yes.
Because if you read someone's dreams or something, they don't really make sense, but you can kind of get a thematic, like, you can kind of get a tiny little picture of who someone is from just a dream. And that's what you're doing with the song.
Endless and deep.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, the song is so good. I know I like The Residents, and I know I like pretty much every track The Residents put out, and I say that constantly, but
Endless and Deep.
Okay.
flute. This track has flute in it.
Wait, okay. Okay. I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this, but flute seems to be a thing that's very much, so far, of this album. Because there's flute in The Other. There's flute in Voodoo Doll for a bit. There's flute in...
Frank's Lament.
there's flute even in Missing Me. So there's a lot of flute, which I don't think there's really much other flute in The Residents. At least not in this concentration before.
Maybe they... I mean, it's... I appreciate it. I think The Residents have always had a sort of orchestral quality to them, even if they don't exactly have access to that breadth of instrumentation at all times. You know, you get this track. This album has like a lot of violin in it too, and I think it's just delicious.
It has bass that rattles my subwoofer.
The bass is pretty good, especially for Frank's Lament. That like step down with the bass, pretty good. Anyway, Endless and Deep. This one's the weirdest one to me because I have no idea what it's about.
I know.
I mean, I kind of do, but
It's weird.
not really.
It gives me the sense of like trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, or at least having known. I mean, yeah, I think it is a sort of trauma that has been experienced here, but also not knowing exactly what it is that occurred.
Like the story, I think the song not so much, but the story it's like, you know, it's talking about how he keeps telling himself it's in the past, but it keeps dragging him back in, and it's talking about the lies, but they're not whole lies, and all these like things that he felt naked and vulnerable and contained, and murky memories and all sorts of things that and that's also something you see a lot with trauma, is just this idea of it being muddled, I guess. It seems like he's been through some, I can't curse on the show, it's a family show, some crapola, is that a curse?
Some real stuff.
He's been through it.
The story, like the part that just hits me the most is, oh yeah, it's in the past, but the past has gravity, full stop. The past has weight, another stop. The past has mass, and it won't go away. It's like,
It's
That's
physically intruding.
Yeah, it was those couple of lines that made me feel like it was definitely something it's something trauma related. It speaks very much of some kind of trauma to me. Like a lot of these songs, the intruders, you know, a lot of them are mental. They're mental intruders. But this one definitely seems like something that happened in his past won't let go.
Yeah. It maintains its grip on him.
It's containment. Ultimately, its single most critical conceit. Until it broke down, but then it never actually receded like it promised.
So he keeps thinking he's escaping, but that never really happens. And so what do you do then? Where do you go?
by the way, the song, much like Missing Me, also features like a...
Yeah, it's sort of like he needs...
hang on, it feels almost... They feel similar because this one also features an endless ocean without hues in the lyrics, which Missing Me kind of does with its underground water thing going on. It's very...
Yeah, I think there's a trauma of loss.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. In both of those tracks, I feel like there's a feeling of being kind of lost, like in Frank's Lament.
Yeah.
And just not knowing who, like, not knowing one's full self almost.
Yeah, losing track of one's full self. And I think that's really that shows up a lot in The Other, right? Because you get this man who is so deeply in love with his wife. You know, the power of that love made their senses of self intertwined. But once she dies, she takes essentially his whole existence, his whole sense of being with her. And so he's sort of left realizing that there is this void in him that is far larger than he knows how to deal with. And what's even worse is that he's literally haunted by his wife. And, you know, he's sort of looking for what he needs, you know, and he doesn't know what he needs. Obviously, he needs his wife back, but he needs something.
Yeah.
Because he has lost everything.
The story to this one, I always imagine the guy from the music video to Perfect Love.
Perfect Love?
Because it starts off the same.
Yes.
And in a way, now that, you know, his wife is gone, she lives on as the sort of perfect love, if you want to tie it back to that song.
Yeah. Peter
Oh my
Whitehead's
God, I was
vocals
just about
on
to
this
say
are
that.
so fitting.
They're so... Whenever the Residents do songs about, like, grief and loss like this, they're always so haunting, so beautiful, but just so... they're so... They're just dripping in grief and those kinds of emotions. This one, very much the same.
They really capture the complexity of loss.
Yeah.
And of need.
Like, I think what I'm thinking of with this and how it's talking about the lyrics, the other hovers over me and covers everything I see, like a lover blinding me, you know, of every... the world awaits, the other aches. The one song off of Talking Light, Randy's Ghost Stories and all that, with the woman... I'm blanking on the name of the song, but Mole, it's your favorite one.
Which song?
The one that, her husband dies and she sees him when she goes to sleep.
That's one for Perchance to Dream.
The Howard story.
Is it
Dream,
Harold?
dream, and I see you.
That was so.
It's the Howard story.
Into the Loving...
Yeah.
Howard! Yeah,
Howard,
I was close.
AKA Perchance. I love that story too. That's my favorite.
Perchance to Dream. There you go.
It does.
Yes. It's sort of like the doppelganger of that. Whoa!
It kind of does almost, except he doesn't slip into a coma to see. But yeah,
But he could.
What if he does?
Yeah, you don't know
That's
him.
true. She does haunt his dreams,
Yeah, I do.
says the story.
Yeah.
Just the
Not a very
all-encompassing
optimistic
nature
though.
of grief in this song.
Yeah.
That's all there. At the end of the day, that's it. It's grief, the song. And not in a bad way, naturally speaking. It just perfectly encapsulates that feeling of just the all-consuming nature of grief.
Yeah. It's very much. It isn't like overtly depressing in the same way that, I don't know, some other songs would be. There's a gentleness.
What's the word? Oh, a certain cat told me about this word. It's melancholy.
yeah. There really is. There's this melancholy to it.
Did I say that?
Maurice, like hat. Rest in peace.
Oh.
There's a gentleness to it because it is, reflections on a loved one. So there is still a kind of beauty still there, buried within that grief. And Peter Whitehead. God, so good.
His voice sounds like if a World War I documentary was speaking. You're silent because I'm right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still needy.
Ah, Nice.
Oh, the
man.
guitar.
I was like, yes, 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 yes.
So
yes.
I want to tell my story about listening to this song for the first time. So, I, as probably everyone else did, sat down with the album, was reading the stories and the lyrics. But I chose not to read ahead in the lyrics on this song. And when the lyrics finally first started up, I was like, this kind of sounds like neediness from Demons Dance Alone. And then when the actual lyrics started, I was like, oh my god, is this allowed? Is this legal? Are you allowed to do this, residents? Because it blew my mind. I jumped in my chair.
I didn't expect them to do this at all.
Mm-mm.
So if you didn't know,
What?
this is a cover. Almost. It's more like just a redo because residents
I
don't do straight up covers.
I'd like to say that when this album was imminent, I remember on Lay, her Instagram, she posted that one lyric sheet thing, and I saw the lyrics and I was like, wait, those look familiar. I just love that too because it's like, okay, Neediness is my favorite Resident song of all their discography. So then I see those lyrics pop up in the context of Intruders and I think, wait. You're remaking it, aren't you? You crazy.
So in case you didn't know, Still Needy is I wouldn't say it's a cover, it's like a revisiting of Neediness from Demons Dance Alone. Because it kind of, first off, it sounds almost like a continuation. It's called Still Needy.
Question mark.
Implying that this is almost a continuation. There was neediness, but now we're still needy. And then the fact that the theme of the song is almost changed. Because the first one was just about...
It's not begging anymore. They're no longer pleading.
Yeah, the first song was about just straight up neediness. This one's more about codependence.
Okay, so with the way that, for example, Running Away has perspective strangeness, my thought with this track is that the perspective has changed. It's from the demon's point of view.
It kind of does sound like that. The song starts out asking to help rather than to receive help, which is what neediness is about.
Yeah, the original song's please, please, oh please, won't you
and
help
this one,
me? And this song,
please, can I help you? And then it also ends with please let me help you. I'll help you. Can I help you? I know just what you need, which is like a twist of the original opening that they sing in the song.
yeah, there's something that I need.
That's such like a sad closing too. It's like, I know what you need, let me help you, but then they won't let him help.
Yeah, we've all been in situations like that, I imagine.
It sucks. As I was saying before though, after a lot of listens, I came to my own personal conclusion that what the song is like is a continuation.
I was good about it
and
that
it's
time.
gone from... Alright, well, the progression kind of goes like, I'm sick of begging,
Christ.
let me help you now, kind of thing. It's like it happens in a lot of situations, like when someone needs help, but they deny needing help. So you're sitting there, you're begging for them to let you help them, but they won't. So then still needy comes, and it says, let me help you now. I know what you need here, just let me help you.
Yeah, well, I mean, lyrically.
Yeah, lyrically.
And to add on to my thing, I bolster that with the fact that the instrument sounds are a lot more aggressive and harsher sounding than the original one.
The texture,
the beat of it, the rhythm. Ooh, the textures.
yeah,
Really loud metallic slamming.
it sounds.
It sounds like the new machine
does.
from
It does
Arkham
sound
Mole.
very.
So many people
mole-like.
noted that.
It definitely has that feel. This song is kind of a reflection of neediness sound-wise as well, because it starts with this long build-up rather than the crescendo that neediness ends on. neediness doesn't really have a build up. I mean, I guess it kind of does, but because you need to build something up to do that crescendo. But it just starts, whereas this one has like 2 minutes before singing starts. We're just banging on stuff, building up this rhythm.
It like arrives.
Yeah. Which is what made it even more surprising to me, because I was like, okay, like, when are we going to get to the words? Oh my god, they're covering neediness. I guess also the texture of Still Needy, and just the sound of it, it feels advanced in a way. I mean, just the technology of synthesized instruments that they're using is advanced. But also just, it feels like the way it sounds, it adds to that sort of feeling that it's a continuation of neediness. Like because there's now this sort of codependence, it's kind of evolved in a more nuanced way. In a way, it really does sound like a 2018 take on neediness from 2002.
Overall, what do we think of Intruders?
Love it.
Oh, Residents did it again.
It's a spooky one. It's
Better.
a spooky one. I listened to it in the dark, and that was difficult.
You know, I just thought about it. You know, it's spooky, but at the same time, have the Residents made anything that sounded happy?
Sure they have.
Yeah, I mean,
Let me just make that harder. Sounded and was thematically happy.
Okay.
My window from Animal Lover.
very.
The American Composer Series is happy. It's done in admiration.
Does that-
I mean, okay, the tunes are the Chubb music is happy,
true.
but also
There's
they're
subtext.
class. They're the bourgeoisie.
They're the
so
douchebags
that
of the
doesn't
mole
count.
universe.
Moles of the world unite.
The laughing song is just about having fun with your
This is going to bother
nonsense.
me. Now that you've asked me that, it's going to bother me until I figure it out.
I mean, because the thing is,
There's gotta be-
Yes.
I have become one of the intruders.
because the thing is that the Residents make me happy, so I'm just like, yeah, all this stuff is happy. Oh wait, no, the Ghost of Hope
Nope.
makes me happy, but when I listen to
really
it, I'm like, oh.
When I listen to Jelly Jack, like the more modern live versions,
Ooh, that makes
I
me
just
very
think
happy.
I just think like, hey, this makes me happy. And then towards the end, it gets all spooky, and I'm like, I'm not happy, but I'm loving this.
I'm not happy, but I'm loving it. I like that.
Speaking
That's
of
my
not
new
being
motto
happy
for
but loving
life.
it, news.
News.
A lot of news. Eskimo deconstructed 2 LP set. Oh my
With a
god.
CD.
Yeah,
Yeah, with a CD.
Oh, it's a whole hour of Arctic wind.
So wait.
And this is the part where we say
An entire hour CD of Arctic Wind. Isn't that just Eskimo?
that's just this is Eskimo.
Ooh.
Correct.
Spicy.
It's like
Next up, other things from Cherry Red. The Mole Box is due out on April 5th, 2019. By the time this episode comes out, it will probably have already been April 5th. So you're
I need to
late.
pre-order that.
And also more from Cherry Red in terms of upcoming Preserveds, the American Composer Series, and Got 'em 3 Persons, and QB.
Ooh, and we got.
Also, American Composers isn't coming out first.
We're also getting news on upcoming vinyl releases for the preserved edition.
For Record Store Day.
Also, there's the Record Store Day one, but then they also talked about in the latest newsletter about Hunters, Gingerbread Man, one other one that I forgot, that would all be going out
Have a
on
bad day.
vinyl in the future, which would probably be like a year from now.
fresh, crispy vinyl MIDI.
We have no money. We will never have any money ever again. Thank you, residents. Another thing, and another important thing. There's not much time remaining. At the time of this recording, there's only 2 weeks left on the special Bunny Boy book, edited by Polly and Jen Craniac, of all... oh god, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, otherwise I'm gonna get flayed alive. It is a compilation of a bunch of the thousands of emails that our dear sweet Bunny Boy received. This is to accompany an upcoming exhibition in France, which is a recreation of Bunny's room.
Ooh.
His secret
That doesn't
room.
sound safe.
No.
Go in
it
there.
They're gonna
probably
trip on a
won't be.
wire or something and burn down the whole place.
Whole place is gonna go up in a shroud of
Oh,
flames.
I see what you did there. God, that sounds because
It was an oil fire.
with the Bunny Boy, you know, you can't really experience the email part anymore. So, yeah.
This is something I've been excited for
and
a
they
long
never released the
time.
emails besides just random people who were emailing out at that time. Saved some of their emails and would like post them online on like fan forums and stuff. But there's no
It gives.
publishing of the emails up until now, or rather soon.
At this point, yeah.
It's gonna be
So
cool.
this is very exciting.
It's gonna be very,
So,
yeah, very cool.
pre-order
Yeah.
that. It's important.
Maybe we'll talk
and
about
finally-
Bunny Boy in a future episode.
That's scary. Don't talk
Yeah,
like that.
that's true.
May I offer you all a comment from a Residence video?
You may.
Oh yeah, you might, or you may.
So, rub your hands together, get nice and comfy. St. Nixon 1 year ago says, "First song is the most frightening I've ever heard."
What was the context?
You!
Wait, it just ends on you?
You, all caps, ellipses.
Oh, you.
Wait, what was the context? What was it on?
I would assume
Oh no.
1 minute movies, maybe.
You!
Isn't
You
that
gosh
part of the
darn
mystery
residents.
part of it?
The mystery is a part of it, yes.
Alright, so anyways, that's all from us at Home Age Conversations.
Whoa.
Tune in next time, which will be soon.
Yeah, and
It'll
we'll
be
talk
soon.
about something.
We promise,
We'll
it'll
talk
be
about
soon.
something. Okay.
Yeah, be sure to follow us on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook. Be sure to check out our website at homeageconversations.com.
Yeah. Check out our website www.homeageconversations.com because we got that website.
And thus concludes our two-part Intruders special with our guest, Eric Drew Feldman. Be sure to check out our bonus episode consisting of just the Eric interview if you want to hear that in its entirety. And join us next time as we explore the most potato chip of all potato chip projects, the Residence, the Bunny Boy.
The Residence is a state of mind. And I think as kind of as is been in demonstrated by this album that came out fairly recently called I Am a Resident. And at the time, you know,
Randy
talking
Rose.
about it, and
Randy
got
Rose.
the idea for the next 12 albums in his head. And I was kind of like still thinking about, oh, I've really got to dig into this Intruders concept and doing that. And, you know, he was fine, and he found somebody else to work on that I thought did, you know, a great job.
He did.
And I feel like would have been more of a stretch for me in a way. And I learned some stuff from listening to that for sure. But, you know, I'm not sure if it is a Residence record, but I kind of think it is, even though it's all guests pretty much. And it's all, you know. So
Exploiting their talents.
yeah, well, exactly. And you know, to talk about another one of the ultimate versions of pay to play.
Yeah.
But everybody that was on that, you know, paid to have the privilege to have a song of theirs, or even if it ends up being, that's what I think became really interesting of it, because they had so many inclusions, people wanting to do it, but sometimes people have a 15, 20-second interlude of what they did. And so, you know, like I said, is everyone's a resident. You know, it's like, it's not, you know, so much the, you know, people talk all about the, you know, the importance and the mythology and the anonymity. And everything I'm saying here breaks down those walls. But I don't know how much, you know, it's kind of for the big fans, and it's, you know, they seem to enjoy that, and that's fine. Let them have it, but it's not, it was never important to me. People always asked me, you know, back in 1982, when I started playing with Philip, and I had a little bit of notoriety then already, they'd always ask me, who are the residents? And I'd say, I could tell you, but I wouldn't mean a damn thing to you. They're not people that you know from anywhere. And they're just talented artists. And they'd say, oh, you mean so none of the Beatles are in it and all this stuff. And I would just laugh. And then
have a really hard time separating the pop from the star from the artist itself.
Yeah.
And not realizing that they don't matter. They don't need to be intertwined.
I had this whole thing, a little, not monologue, but in an interview that I did for The Theory of Obscurity, that in an early cut was sort of the point, but I guess it wasn't very fun, was that I said that, I really said that right off. I said, it doesn't matter who the residents are. It's not interesting. What's interesting is what they do. And the cloak of the anonymity, you know, for them makes it easier for them to do it, apparently. But I said, that's not what's interesting about what they do, is who are they? You know, they're everybody, you know. And, but somehow that didn't, they wanted something a little more mystique, so that was all cut.
A little sexier.
Yeah. And, because I never saw that cut, but I think Carla told me that she saw it and thought that was really good.
Well, what would you say your favorite track off of Intruders is? Do you have one that you found most interesting to work on, or one that's...
There's several. And probably not the ones that you would think.
Well, that's even more exciting.
Yeah. I think the one called Still Needy was really fun. It's just because it wasn't really like that at the beginning, but I kind of just realized, I don't know, this is kind of like some sort of a vamp in a jam that's felt really heavy to me, and I kind of exploited it for that. Like I, you know, just made it kind of like just a heavy vamp for the whole thing, and then, you know, there's all these layers of orchestrations that come on it, but at the bottom it's just like a really throbbing, you know, bass and drum beat and all this stuff, and I tend to know how to do, therefore I take advantage of it, making those sounds kind of more expanded than they have been previously on Resonance records. You know, as they would say, you know, a lot of people, at times, including myself, till I'm over it, I realized, you know, everybody said, oh, what's your favorite Resonance records? And I'd kind of say, oh, it's, you know, Fingerprints, or that other one we mentioned earlier.
Not available.
Not available. Favorite records of, you know, of mine, of theirs. And, you know, Tales of Two Cities. But, you know, the good things, and I got this from talking
Charles
about
Bobuck.
heavy things, you know. there's a naivete, that's how you say it, French. It was never my prized subject in school. To me, in the approach of how they did it. And I'm not sure that I'm even accurate in saying that, but, it kind of did. They were just, wow, we have a 4-track tape recorder or a 2-track tape recorder, and they figured out how to use it. And nobody told them that you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
And what we are blessed with is a great batch of music. But, at some point then, as the technology moved on and the residents not wanting necessarily to repeat themselves, started becoming more a band that was like embracing new technology all the time. And with that becomes the good and the bad. And, you can't keep pretending to be a non-musician forever once you're becoming more and more of a sophisticated composer. So that's what I think sort of happened with them. And so that kind of freed me up for, I always kind of am attracted towards music that's rough, but not necessarily naive.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel that I can bring that to it as a certain.
Yeah, the residents from their earliest days through current have always had very sophisticated compositions. They might not be classically trained musicians, but the ideas, the understanding of what sounds good, be it to the Western ear or not, that foundation's always been there.
Hi, good to see you. Good.
Okay.
So.
Well, do you know of any future plans for the Intruders concept beyond the initial album?
I hope we play in some form or another these songs on an upcoming tour, though I know the plans. It seems like that's always the thing with the residents, is I was really pretty excited after Ghost of Hope. And all we did is, in Between Dreams, we included a couple of songs that we could play from that. And, we're already playing, then we eventually moved that song I mentioned earlier called Voodoo Doll into the live set. But
does any of it have to do with the way the songs are composed, that they're not necessarily live performance?
Well, hardly any of them are as recorded. But that's why you always hear like a song from 25, 30 years ago with the residents that sounds completely different. Yeah. And it usually adheres to some, musical center. Some of the arrangements they were doing with some of the songs, I don't really hear it sometimes. I remember when, for whatever reason, when I came on board, whoever were the not producers, but the agents for some of the parts of tours apparently had said they really wanted them to play Constantinople. And so they worked up a version of it that suited what they were doing then, which is fine, other than it wasn't going to satisfy somebody that wanted
to hear
Constantinople as they knew it. So when I came on board, I tried to say, let's just find a way to make this a little closer to what was recorded, because I didn't maybe have the same history with it that they might have had of, like, that they loathed it after 40 years. But
Well,
Charles Bobuck.
also really, really good at deconstructing a song and then deconstructing that again and deconstructing it again and again and again and then putting it back together into an almost completely unrecognizable form of what it once was.
right, which is great, but sometimes it's not going to help you in a live situation where you're trying to do something familiar. Kind of reminds me a little bit of if you've ever gone to see Bob Dylan in the last 20 years or 15 years.
I have not.
He can come out and start singing a song and you're like, and then he hits the chorus and you go, oh yeah, it's that song, but you had no idea until he got there. You know, he's completely riffing on something in his own head that is very different, you know, which I totally respect, you know, nothing wrong with it. But so, you know, in some ways, I suppose we're going to be doing that with some of these songs because we have to take a way of doing something that was, you know, recorded with multi-tracks galore and little bits and bobs with several people and try to figure out how to play it with 3 people, you know, and so that's always the challenge. You know, sometimes I wish we could manage to have another person or two, but I don't really like really big bands, but having just a little more of that kind of talent around opens up possibilities.
Yeah.
So, but I don't see it. It's hard enough to just get out there and go do a tour and be able to come back not having being in debt.
Yeah, you don't want to lose money on a tour.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything you can tell us about any potential future work that the residents are working on right now?
Well, they're working on a project that I'm sure I can tell you about. That is it's kind of a story about a blues singer from the early 70s whose name is professional name is Dying Dog, and you know, they plan to release a record of their version of several of his songs, plus a version of, well, it's like an acetate that they found of his music, which got them into the idea of doing the project. So nobody's ever really heard of him. Any, you know, as far as I understand it, the mystique of Dying Dog is that he was a big fan of Howlin' Wolf and kind of emulated him to some degree, and then got some, you know, a little bit of money, went into a recording studio and, you know, recorded some sides, and somewhere near the end of this process, Howlin' Wolf died, and Dying Dog just apparently went crazy and just disappeared, and whereabouts remain unknown. And all the
copies of these records have been found?
There was just a copy.
One
copy that the residents, you know, found at a like a garage sale or a flea market, and they for 25 cents or 50 cents they bought, you know, these, I think they were 45s, and listened to them and found them really interesting.
And so the residents are going to
release those.
Oh,
Release those, and then versions of their interpretations of his songs.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Does that have a potential time window as far as when?
Late 2019 or 2020, at least for releasing the the release of his versions.
Okay.
And then there's a tour that's planned for them. That's why what I was going on saying, things are always behind and ahead of themselves. I think there was an idea that they should do a tour of playing the album. Oh man, what's wrong with me? What's the one that was re-released on CD as
Undisclosed Project?
a tour? I think that's going to be a, two halves with an intermission with
Undisclosed Project?
2019 or 2020 and some Dying Dog stuff. So these things are always subject to change, but that's, as I understand it now.
If any other group in the history of music that's subject to change, that's the Residents.
But that's what we've kind of are working towards right now is making the Residents versions of Alvin Snow's music, and we'll see what happens.
Well, now we've got some important questions. From the fans.
I'm an Aries.
That was actually the second question. The first one is, what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Coffee.
Favorite mainstream pop song from any point in time?
Oh, come on. I mean, you think that's a light. That is really hard for me to... What does pop mean, by the way? But narrow that down.
We'll narrow pop down to top 40 radio.
My favorite song that I ever heard on Top 40 radio. See, I have so many dozens and hundreds of songs that are just below Top 40
Okay,
that I
how
love.
about, let's rephrase that, favorite guilty pleasure pop song? Something that you've heard that you would never tell anyone that you like.
Oh, I'll tell somebody, but it's, but I do feel guilty. I think the first time I ever heard Jumping Jack Flash, the studio version, I was like, whoa. Just the sound of the record is just sizzling. It sounds like it sounds like there's going to be flames coming off the needle of the 45 to me. And so I really loved that. I really love the albums of Jack Bruce. Do you know who that is?
I don't know Jack Bruce.
Jack Bruce was a main composer and singer from a band called Cream.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with Cream.
Yeah. And right after Cream, he did a few solo records that are...
Did he recently pass away?
Yeah, not about... Years fly by now way too fast, so I don't know, but it was like maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And one of my great regrets is I did see them when I was about 12 or 13, and the opportunity did arise to fly to New York to see them when they did these.
Reunion.
Yeah, and I really wanted to do it and was trying to talk a buddy into it, and he kind of said, okay, but it was that kind of a project that before you could think about doing it, it was sold out. And the original prices of tickets were probably like $800, so it was always out of my range, and then they were going to be $8,000, so plus a plane ticket to New York, so I bailed. I'm trying to think. There was also a band that I grew up because they were sort of in the same neighborhood as me, a band called Spirit that I loved, and their first 4 albums are amongst, the closest to my heart, and, I learned and have exploited and extracted so much from what they were all doing that I could be sued. And I'm not the only one, but they actually had an instrumental song on their first record that recently their heirs tried to sue Led Zeppelin because a lot of people think this that Stairway to Heaven, especially the intro, is a direct ripoff from this song.
Spirit?
Yeah.
That's some drama right there.
Yeah, so it's been in court and got through some lower things and agreed with, but then I heard after like 3 years in the courts it was rejected. So, but they're not free of having liberated songs from blues people and things like that. So, but they were especially too on tour. The very early days of Led Zeppelin, they were on tour with Spirit, so makes sense. So it's not just out of.
So it's not out of the blue. It's not a total coincidence.
Yes. So, anyway, this is not necessarily stuff for the podcast, but.
Next question. Do you feel that had the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand been successfully thwarted, World War I would have never happened? Or the tensions in Europe built up to such an extent that it was bound to happen sooner or later, and the assassination served more or less as an excuse for these countries to declare war?
Here's what I think. I think somebody, if you had the ability to time travel and you went back to before that assassination attempt and you swatted a fly that hadn't been swatted in history, that everything could be different. That's enough to make it different. So I think the whole concept of time travel is extremely dangerous, and I love to agree with any of that stuff. But it's not particularly original, but there's a book of the last, I think, 5 years or so by Stephen King that's called 11/22/63.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know it existed, but I went into a cafe in this neighborhood one day for a coffee, and they have books in this place that you can read. And instead of looking at my phone, I picked up a book that was there, and it was this book. And 25 years ago, I read several Stephen King books, so I was like, here's an old friend that I haven't really been keeping up with. And I found it really engrossing, and the basic premise of that book is of a guy from modern times that for various reasons is convinced to go back pre-Kennedy assassination and try to change it. And he's successful, and being successful, he comes back, and the present is not the present that he left, and it's so different and so horrible that he's forced to go back again and to make sure that which is so against his grain, but to make sure that Lee Harvey Oswald is successful. It's an interesting premise for a yarn. So,
last question. Do you believe in aliens?
I see no reason not to believe in aliens. Sure. Why would we be? We're just a little speck of sand in this whole thing. Why would be the only speck of sand with what we like to call sentient beings? I think that it just makes sense. I haven't seen true evidence of it. I'm not somebody I've had my UFO experiences to have them be proven to not be real. The closest one, once I was down in La Jolla, California, working on a soundtrack for a play down there, and I was asleep one night, and I woke up like with a start, totally like what seems fake, but there was the sound of engines in front of outside of my condo windows where I was staying, so that if you screamed, you couldn't hear yourself scream, and really bright lights flashing, and that went on for 5 minutes or whatever, and I was kind of terrified. I was like, sitting I was in the bed that I was sleeping in this place was kind of a mattress on the floor. And I sat up and my back was against the wall and I had the covers around me. And I said, I kind of waited it out. And this is the part that made me the next day. And then I went back to sleep. And what always seemed weird to me as I explained this to anybody was why didn't I get up and look outside the window? But it was so loud and so terrifying that I think I was just viscerally couldn't move. I was really, and then I decided after the fact that it was a dream. But I was, in the theater a couple days later, and on a break I heard some of the actors sitting around talking about the noise from a couple of nights before around the place where we were staying. And I kind of went up to them and I said, Tuesday night? And they said, yeah. And, everybody explained their experience, which was a variation of mine. And I said, I think there was something, because here's my version of it. Or the next day or days later, there was an article in the local newspaper saying that a naval plane, one of these huge planes that carries nothing but fuel, that was full, got lost in the fog and was flying over this residential area in...
Sure it was.
Yeah, and they said it was at an altitude of less than 1,000 feet. And if it was true, and I mean, if it had happened, it would have been one of those accidents that, so many tens of thousands of people would have been crucified.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was that. So I went, okay, there it goes, explained away. And it was on page 19 of the front section of the paper, because I think there were all these people going, what did you do? Was that a UFO? And
so then the news had to put something out.
yeah, so that came out.
Quell the fears.
Yeah, I've never feared about it. I've worked with this guy, Black Francis, a lot. He's written a lot of songs about UFOs and experiences. And supposedly when he was a baby, his mom and her husband at the time, took him to this thing where there was a really close sighting and he was there and all this. That's the closest they've been able to figure out why he's always had this direct fascination with it.
Well, Eric, before I let you go, is there anything else you want to tell us? Anything that you want to plug? Any upcoming projects you're working on?
Well, I'm only going to say is it's only in very early stages, and I hope I have some other way to keep you informed of this, but myself and the redoubtable Sivan Lion Cub, that's her real name, that I mentioned earlier, we've been doing some collaborations, and at this point we've decided to call our project Puff Horse.
Puff Horse.
Which is a train reference. That's an old word for in fact on an old Beefheart song he says, the old Puff Horse was just pulling through. So anyway, it just came to us. We tried about 1 million names. Because that's, when you decide you're going to start a band or a project, you have to have a name.
I got the best name in the world, of course.
Yeah.
Well, when Puff Horse comes out with...
I'll let you know.
You let me know and we'll get it on this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, or we have a few songs even before it's out. Because we have a couple things scheduled. Yeah, I hope we've talked enough about...
The only thing I'm going to do... Here, let's say our goodbyes first.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me. Once you get me going, you can't shut me up. So...
Well, until next time, we really appreciate you hanging with us.
Okay, well, thank you much.